President Biden marking Veterans Day with a visit to Arlington National Cemetery in Washington. He speaks on what it means to be a veteran. The Pentagon says there could be dozens of family members of U.S. troops still in Afghanistan, nearly 3 months after U.S. troops withdrew and the Taliban took over Kabul. And a new generation of service pups is here. That's after one special dog launched a movement to help veterans, and that special dog's legacy lives on. Tune into Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Freedom is not free. That's the message that greets viewers on the National Parks page for the Korean War Memorial. On this Veterans Day, we express our deep gratitude for all those who served, for giving us the freedoms we enjoy every day. Victims of communism posted, "This Veterans Day, we remember that freedom is never free, and we honor those who have bravely answered the call, no matter the price." But before we get into the events of the day celebrating those who fought for our freedoms, what about the Americans who aren't back on U.S. soil? The Pentagon says there could be dozens of family members of U.S. troops still in Afghanistan, nearly 3 months after U.S. troops withdrew and the Taliban took over Kabul.
The military mission in Afghanistan is over, but the mission itself to continue to get our people out of Afghanistan and back home or to their new homes in the United States is not over, and we're going to continue to work inside the interagency to do that.
The Undersecretary of Defense for Policy issued a memo stating the Biden administration is currently putting together a database of relatives. The withdrawal from Afghanistan was set into motion by then-President Trump. But the Biden administration extended the withdrawal deadline and has been widely criticized for how it handled the pullout. Critics focus on several major aspects: how Americans were left behind, how U.S. service members were killed, and why the evacuations were so chaotic. Americans were forced to go through Taliban checkpoints to reach the Kabul airport. And now President Biden marking Veterans Day with a visit to Arlington National Cemetery in Washington. Biden laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, which is the final resting place for 3 unidentified U.S. service members. One fought in World War I, one died in World War II, and the third died during the Korean War. The monument was dedicated exactly 100 years ago on November 11th. This year's ceremony comes after 2 days, allowing members of the public to lay flowers at the plaza for the first time in 96 years. And speaking at the Arlington Cemetery, Biden on what it means to be a veteran.
It's an honor that not only a small percentage of Americans can claim, and one that marks those who are able to claim it as brothers and sisters. It's a badge of courage that unites across all ages, regardless of background, because to be a veteran is to have endured and survived challenges most Americans will never know.
And what about ways to help veterans? The Biden administration announces new support for troops exposed to environmental hazards during deployments. A particular concern, burn pits. They were used to get rid of waste, hazardous material, and chemical compounds at military sites throughout Iraq and Afghanistan. 86% of post-9/11 veterans who served in those areas say they were exposed. That's according to a 2020 survey by the nonprofit Veterans Group. The Department of Veterans Affairs previously said those exposed may be at a greater risk for longer-term health conditions. And now the Biden administration's announcement brings a number of new support options to sick veterans, including a so-called presumption of exposure and expanded disability benefits. Other efforts announced Thursday include improving data on individual exposures and raising awareness about veteran benefits. And what about the military families? First Lady Jill Biden called on the nation to help military families in a White House speech on Wednesday.
We can celebrate caregivers' kids' strength and resilience. We can and we must give our military and veteran caregiving families everything they need to care for their wounded warrior with compassion, dignity, and love. We must bring Hidden Helper service out of the shadows. Let their light shine bright and give them the support that they need to survive.
The First Lady focused on children who act as a family caregiver. A new report found more than 2 million kids live with a disabled veteran, and many of those kids have to take on additional responsibilities to help out. Gabby Rodriguez speaks about being one of those kids.
So many kids feel lonely because they think they're the only ones who have an injured parent and a caregiver parent. When I was little, our dad spent so much time at Shepherd's Center Hospital because of his brain injury that I got used to talking to other children who had moms and dads in the hospital. When we finally brought my dad home, I would still go to the playground and ask other kids, "Was your dad in the military? Does he have a boo-boo on his brain?" It was 3 long years when I went to a veteran family retreat for military kids that I finally made my first friend who answered yes to both of those questions. And it was a huge moment for me. So I want every other caregiver kid out there to know that there are millions of us. You are not alone.
Gabby admits they were scared to speak in front of everyone, but said she knew they needed to remind other caregiver kids that they aren't alone. She says it can be tough, but she plays her role to bring light to the family. And that report comes from an organization called Mathematics that found kids who act as caregivers can experience high levels of stress, burnout, fatigue, anxiety, depression, and have trouble at school. The study was commissioned by Joining Forces, a group formed by Jill Biden and then First Lady Michelle Obama. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation and the Wounded Warriors Project were also involved. And now before we end, as we celebrate our nation's veterans, we also celebrate the service dogs trained to help them recover from the physical and emotional trauma. One special dog launched a movement to help veterans, and that special dog's legacy lives on. To tell the story of these little guys, you have to start with this dog named Gabe.
It started for me about 26 years ago when I was gifted a golden retriever puppy by some good friends while I was working as a social worker.
Gabe was with Yount one day as he drove a deeply traumatized young boy away from a troubled home.
He stopped sobbing kind of abruptly, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and what I saw was this 4-month-old Golden with his head on this little boy's lap, and that's how I kind of discovered the healing power of dogs.
Inspired by Gabe, Yount founded Warrior Canine Connection, which has a unique approach. The group provides service dogs to veterans like Tim O'Boyle, who struggled with PTSD after serving in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I was very suicidal. I was suicidal for many years.
But WCC does more than just offer dogs to vets. They ask struggling veterans to help them train dogs for others injured in battle.
It was something I could grasp. Like, okay, I have to go see the dogs because they're for my battle buddy.
O'Boyle eventually got his own dog, Sandy. He says the dogs don't ask how you are feeling, they just know what you need. Dogs like Cortez and Mikey, who like all of the dogs here, are named after veterans. They will one day provide critical emotional and/or physical support for their person. It's part training, part instinct.
I go into a store one time and didn't realize it was too much for me, and she just took me out of the store.
It's what Yount saw in Gabe, now long gone.
He always seemed to know what to do. He just had this wisdom about him.
Now, for the very first time, Yount decided to use Gabe's frozen sperm to try and make Gabe a father once again. On October 30th, Mama Devon, named for a sergeant killed in Afghanistan 10 years ago, gave birth to Gabe's 10 puppies on the Warrior Canine Connection's 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, I think Gabe would be proud.
In these tiny 10 pups, Gabe's legacy lives on. When they are ready, they'll be trained to become therapy dogs themselves, helping another generation of veterans. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.